all of the ways that we are connected, right? Remembering our cosmic connection in the midst of the drama of the world, right? It's good to kind of take a breath, and as we ramp up towards the election and what will happen, what, you know, the energy in the world that will be unleashed through that, and really, I think the next 90 days, we're in for kind of a bumpy ride, right? No matter what happens, people's anxiety is up, the tension is up, people's fears and concerns are up. There's a right? It would be foolish for us to not acknowledge that that's all around us right now. And so we need to kind of take a breath, reground ourselves in the basics of what we know, and to lean in with compassion and love, and giving people the benefit of the doubt as much as possible, right? To treat each other tenderly. Somebody might blow up at you, and you may not know why, right? And it may have nothing to do with whatever the interaction is, but everything to do with kind of this unsettling stirring that's going on in their soul about all of this, right? We may snap at our spouses or our partners or our children. And so it's a time to kind of bring some extra mindfulness and some extra compassion to the surface. Yeah. So connection is something that we all long for, right? I want to talk about the ways in which we long for this connection today, and how we can extend it to that which we identify as the other, and how important that is, particularly right now. Because connection is something that's universal. The longing to connect and to be connected is something innate within us, right? It's from infancy, from before infancy, right? And we know that when children can heal when they're held close, those first moments after they're born, on the mother's chest, and how important it is for the father to hold the child as well, and the neural connections that happen through touch and through connection, through gentleness and through love and compassion and tenderness. These are all things that are really, really important to our development as human beings. And so I'm so glad that we're finding ways to connect at SLCA, right? The driving concert, the walk, the art project, all of these things. And for those of you not in the local Atlanta area, those that I call our omni-local SLCA family, we have not forgotten you, right? We're looking at ways of building connection in the technology so that you are still very much a centerpiece of this connection and what it means to be a part of SLCA. So, well, we love you, and we're looking forward to launching some new initiatives that will put you at the center of everything that we have going on as well. Because SLCA has grown in this season to this omni-local, meaning right local locations in many places, centered in many places, which is an expression of our theology, right? We believe in a God whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere, right? And so it makes sense that we would be seeing this expressed in who SLCA is right now as we evolve and grow into our greatest yet to be. So all of that really, really exciting as we stay tuned in to what's emerging in us. And so, you know, this is, again, covering this idea of basic connection. This was an interesting week for me. Not because of the sports stuff, but because of some other things. I had two posts in the last couple of days on Facebook that kind of went viral, right? Well, viral for me anyway, meaning they were shared a bunch of times. They were, liked and commented on a bunch of times. And I don't post, as an individual on social media for that purpose. I share stuff about the church and our, broadcast for that purpose, but I'm not trying to get a certain number of likes or fans or anything like that. But every once in a while, something I do just kind of takes off and has a life of its own. And it's really interesting to watch and see what it is that does that and when it happens, right? And so I tuned into these two posts, and One was about denouncing white supremacy and the way in which I did it. I said that whiteness was the biggest disease that the world has. And somebody decided to give SLCA a negative review because of that comment. And I thought, well, there's no such thing as bad press. I'm actually going to share that review. I'm not going to try to delete it or hide it. I'll just put it out there. Like, this person gave us this review, and this is why they gave us this review. They don't think this is a place that they can recommend because the leader said whiteness is the biggest disease that the world has. And so I shared that and got to explain in my comments what I meant by that. And Facebook thought that was, they flagged it as hate speech, which I thought was really interesting, right? This idea that talking about whiteness is seen as more dangerous than the effects of whiteness itself, right? Systemic white supremacy. So that was very interesting, and that got a lot of traction. And the next day, I posted a prayer for our president in regards to COVID-19 and all of that. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I'm not going to read the prayer. You can read it if you choose to. But that got some interesting traction. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people really seemed to be served by it and found the words, which was not a traditional 5-step prayer, but was just more of a prayer, right? I feel like the commercial of the world's most interesting man, right? You know, the guy with the white hair and the beard, right? I don't always pray affirmative, right? I don't always pray affirmatively, but when I do, it's a 5-step affirmative prayer, And so this was not a traditional 5-step affirmative prayer. It was just a kind of more of a stream of consciousness of what I would pray for as I am thinking about everything that's going on. And I'll say more about that, but it got a lot of people who have no idea what affirmative prayer is or even know what New Thought is, who they found in the words of what I expressed, something connected with their heart, something that was missing in the other expressions that were taking place, that felt empty and void for them, that they couldn't connect to. And so they could connect to this, and they shared it. And it's been shared over 150 times. And I've been trying to keep up with the dialogues that are happening in each of those threads. So I share all of this to say that there's something about our longing and needing to connect. And when we reground ourselves in the basic awareness that God is all there is, that there's one power, one presence, and one life, and you and I are connected into this infinite cosmic reality, into this infinite field of potentiality and all of that, right? When we anchor into step 1 of affirmative prayer, the question for a lot of us in this teaching becomes, well, what do we do with that anxiety part of ourselves? What do we do with that part of ourselves that does see the damaging effects of somebody operating out of principle, somebody not operating in compassion or empathy, or doing intentional damage to other human beings? What do we do with our sense of boundaries and finding that behavior unacceptable? Is the notion that I believe that we're all one, does that mean that I then have to move into kind of this, what I call spiritual niceness, right? I just have to kind of, it was like having a New Thought lobotomy, right? And I just, I love and light everybody. And I really don't have an opinion because I shouldn't have an opinion because that would be controversial and that would be judgmental. So, well, maybe, if that's what works for you, but some of us aren't there, right? Some of us aren't there all the time, right? Myself included. And so what do we do with that energy, right? And so I want to kind of talk about that today because I don't think oneness means spiritual niceness. I think the conviction of oneness actually has a deeper, more radical implication to it that helps us create a world that works for everyone. So we're going to try to unpackage that today a little bit and throughout this series. So this idea of cosmic connection, that there is something, let's begin at the beginning, right? There's something that binds us all together. Right, it's about the stardust of the universe. It's about the field of unlimited potentiality in which we all live, move, and have our being. It's about 7 billion years of cosmic evolution that has infused itself into your bones and into your breath and into your skin and into your eyeballs and into everything that you see around you, into the colors and the vibrancy of the universe, right? It's about this one power, which is good, this one power, which is wholeness, this one power, which is beauty and love and lavish abundance, and gives itself freely to all of its creation, right? Can you feel that? That's what this thing that we're trying to connect to is. It's this beautiful, lavish abundance that gives itself freely to all of creation, because it wants to express itself through you and through everyone else. And there begins our kind of like deep inquiry that we have to do when we start learning about this, right? It's like kind of like, wait, everyone else? Yeah, that's right. Everyone else, everyone. Oh, well, actually, I mean, everyone, really, everyone? I mean, yeah, certainly most people. Yeah, for sure. Right. And really like just about all of most people. Yeah, absolutely. But there's some exceptions, right? No. So everyone is included in this wholeness and this all good. Yep. Everyone's included. Some don't know it. Some don't act like it. But whether they know it or act like it, they're still included. Okay, I have questions. Right? Have you ever had this voice in your head? Like, wait a second, I have questions. And it's like, and Spirit says to us, well, have you ever read the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son? Right? Yeah. All right. Well, I suggest you read it again. Right? Because it's really clear, right? Everyone's included. We can go off. We can be disconnected, not know that we're connected to our good, not act like we're connected to our good, really act in ways that might even be abhorrent to honoring the goodness that is our divine inheritance. And when we turn and we come back into recognition that God is our source, that thing, that energy will lavish us abundantly with all good things, because it is our birthright, right? We're all included, right? And so what does this mean with all of the moments when we encounter, or maybe are even at the effect of people who don't know that they're one, right? Somebody who's acting out of an ignorance of their connection with the divine. They don't know that they're connected to me. And in fact, they actually are convinced that they're disconnected from me, that my life doesn't matter, right? And that the decisions they make, be they just personal decisions or behaviors, or if they're in positions of power and authority, how they treat me, what policy they enact or don't, right? And these are the things of politics, right? The Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade and civil rights and human rights, right? Like what happens when we're in a community setting and there are some people who don't think that my life matters, or don't think that I have a right to govern my own body, or fill in the blank, right? Those are just examples. What do we do with all of these moments that we encounter, or maybe are even at the effect of people who don't know that they're one with me and one with the divine, right? And the answer to that question is that, well, from a spiritual perspective, is about leading with compassion, right? Compassion seems like the right answer, but maybe you are like some of us, and maybe you're like me, in that compassion sometimes is hard to stir up when we're feeling like we're at the effect of abuse, right? Well, here's what I would say to that. I would say, one, if you have that feeling, you're not alone. You're not alone. And we're going to walk through this together today and try to kind of get some understanding here. So, but before I go further into that and talk about how we can come from a compassionate place in relationship to those that we see as the other. Let's back up just a little bit and let's talk about kind of just the origin story of our being, because that story is really informative. Those of you who know me know that when I teach Bible lessons, I will teach about context, and that the context informs the content, right? The context that it takes place in. And the same is true for us on a cosmological scale, right? The context, how we define and how we relate to our origin story, is the context that has a deep, profound impact on the content of our lived experience, right? Einstein's version of this is, the fundamental question you have to answer is this a friendly universe or not, right? How do we relate to that idea of the context that we're living in? And so using the Bible here as just a reference point, as one reference point of sacred text, and the reason I do, and I know sometimes people are like, oh, a Bible story again. I'm not going to actually tell a specific Bible story today, but kind of generally talk about it as an expression of consciousness, right? Because what do we teach in this? If you've been in class with me, you know the initials CIE, right? Consciousness is everything, right? It's everything, right? Okay, I got the bell here in my new setup too. So if you're wondering where the bell is, consciousness is everything. And so the stories that we find were, by the way, written by many different authors over hundreds of years in different contexts. And so not so much the inspired word of God, but the inspired word of man about God and about our cosmic connection, right, to the universe and to each other and to the whole thing, and how to make sense of this thing that we're walking in. And so the biblical stories are just as sacred as Black Panther, or just as sacred as any other or Star Wars series, right? Because movies today are ways in which we are trying to make sense, expressing creatively and trying to make sense of our connection to this thing that's bigger than us. So that's all it is. And I find it to be a very profound set of lessons. And so just looking very quickly at an overview of what the Old Testament, the sacred Jewish text gives us, the story in the beginning, which I shared a few weeks ago on our After the Sermon program. I shared that the story in Genesis is not so much it's a story that's telling about the beginning of the universe, but it's not stenographer notes of the origins of the universe, right? It's a story that's happening in context in the Solomon and David kingdoms, in which they have once again gotten off track from the covenant of caring for one another. And so it is a story of correction. It's a story of resetting. It's a story. It's a directive text to say, hey, we need to start over again. Let's go back to the beginning because things have gotten a little wacky, right? That's the intention of the author. So what do we get when we look at that story? We get a story that begins here, right? It's an earth-bound story. It begins in the formless and the voidless and the spirit moving over the dark and the water and the land and everything being formed, and then us emerge, all plant life and animal life emerging. It's here. It's earth-based. It's wind and air and water and breath. It's here. It's physicality, right? Our story begins here, created from an invisible essence, but anchored in the here, right? And I firmly believe that where a story begins and where a story ends is really important, right? Informative to us. And so the story begins here. The story ends here. right? At the end of Genesis, it is about the restoration of the kingdom. It's about a beautiful city, and everything has its place, and every tree and every person, everything is put in its proper place, and the kingdom has been restored. And God, is the scripture says, God dwells among his people, its people, right? God dwells among the people here, not some far off place, but here. So if the story begins here and ends here, then what is all this stuff in between? And all that stuff in between, beginning in Genesis 3 all the way through the first part of Revelations, is about the restoration of the ways in which we've gotten off track and we've forgotten, right? Genesis 3 is about the disruption of wholeness, the disruption of shalom, right? The disruption of our authentic place, our right order of things, our own wholeness, forgetting who we are, Cain and Abel. Every story that unfolds is about how we've gotten off track and how we need to reestablish a covenant and get back together again and understand our connection, right? So the invitation from a metaphysical perspective in Scripture is about returning to wholeness, right? It's about coming back to remembering who you are. Come on, talk to me, somebody. It's about remembering who you are. It's about remembering that you were created out of the formless. You were created from the stardust. You were created and endowed with the powers and the capacities to co-create your universe through your thoughts and attitudes and beliefs, through the affirmations of your mouth, through the name that you give to the world, through all of these things. You are a co-creator with God, and you were created in wholeness to be a receptacle that receives the divinity, the fullness, the abundance, the beauty, the wholeness, the health, the vitality of spirit, and to give expression to it. And that this expression isn't complete unless you are doing what is yours to do, right? So the invitation is come home, return, reclaim your place at the table of creation. Woo! Come on, somebody. Reclaim your spot. Because you have been endowed, you have a crown of glory called your consciousness, right? But you have forgotten, and they have forgotten, and they have forgotten, and we have forgotten. And we've created this mess of division and polarization and fighting against each other because we have forgotten the power that was imbued in us in the beginning, right? And so our task is to bring back wholeness, right? If the story begins here and ends here, by the way, the New Thought version, that's the Centers for Spiritual Living, the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta's version of ends here is not about revelations, right? But it's about, we call that a world that works for everyone. We are born in wholeness. God is all there is. That's the beginning. And the end is the revelation is a world that works for everyone. That's the beginning and the end. And what happens in between? The reclamation of our whole selves, the understanding of the power of our word, the understanding of the use of our consciousness, the understanding of the affirmative nature of our prayers, understanding of the perception that we bring to the world, right? Am I making sense? Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me this morning? Right? So it's, in other words, the journey is not about getting out of here, right? It's not about, the goal is not a disembodied evacuation of the earthly realm, right? It's not about a disembodied evacuation. We're not about ascending to somewhere else that's going to be better than this. It's about bringing heaven on earth, right? Right now, to make a world that works for everyone. We're not trying to get out of jail free card, right? By being saved. And by the way, it's not just Christianity and other forms of, Islam and other religions have this disembodied evacuation kind of theology in certain expressions of it. But New Thought is not immune to that. Let me just say something real quick. If you're laughing and saying, oh, thank God we're not that, New Thought's not off the hook here. We have our versions of disembodied evacuation, right? Where we try to tell people that the spirit is more real than the physical, and if we just remain up here, then we don't have to worry about down here. Oh, come on, talk to me, somebody. There's a disconnection. There's a bifurcation and duality sometimes in our thinking when we try to make the spirit more important than the physical. But the story says that the spirit moves on the physical, and that the physical is the integration and the weaving together and the expression of spirit. The two are tied together in one thing, you see. So we cannot fool ourselves into a sort of new thought disembodied evacuation that says to be, as a old friend of mine used to say, don't be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, right? We got to bring the two together. So our purpose is not disembodied evacuation. That's not our goal. Our purpose and our goal is a radical and holy participatory physicality, an embodiment of the divine, and expressing that to, for, and with each other. Are you with me? Yes? And so everything that happens in this dimension is about the restoration of shalom. It's about the restoration of order. It's about the restoration of wholeness. It's about coming home to ourselves. The lessons that are required in order for us to wake up and reclaim our seat at the table. Right? And so, being spiritual is not about being so ultra nice to everyone, and having that new thought lobotomy that we just, it's God is all there is, right? Right? It's not about being so ultra nice and seeing everything through the eyes of love that we never raise our voices, that we never have a cause or have a cause to stir, right? It's actually about getting in it. It's actually about bringing passion. It's actually about using the power of our consciousness to raise the Millennium Falcon, right? Again, right? Right? Yoda, you remember? Don't try, do, right? Use the power of your consciousness and raise up that old ship and get on board and go do what you got to do. Who's with me? Who's my Star Wars people out there, right? It's about, and in the midst of this remembering who we are, it's also remembering that there's only one thing happening here. There's only one thing happening here. And therefore, as the old song from Alliance says, you're right, I love myself the way I am. I love the third verse of that song, right? I love myself the way I am, for I can clearly see that all the things I judge are done by people just like me, right? I love myself the way I am, and I can clearly see that all the things I judge are done by people just like me. Whoa, really, right? And so we seek not to villainize others, but to understand that when we see hurting happening in the world, when we see abuse happening in the world, when we see things that are out of alignment with the spirit of covenant that says that we all belong to each other, we understand that hurting people hurt people, right? Hurting people hurt people. And so our job to bring forward compassion doesn't mean to be blind to the abuse. But in actuality, one of the most compassionate things we can do is call it out and put up a boundary and say, that behavior doesn't belong here, right? That behavior is out of alignment with the spirit of the covenant that says we belong to each other. That behavior doesn't work, right? So compassion and spirituality and believing in oneness is not just, oh, I only see through the eyes of love, and the people that are not like me, I just love them, and no, you actually get to have some passion and some juice and say, no, that behavior right there, not on my watch. Not on my watch, because I know that you and I are connected. I know that there's only one thing happening here. I know that the people in the cages at the border belong to me. And so that policy, that behavior that puts them there, no, not on my watch. Why? Because we are one, right? Oneness has passion and vigor and radical implications. It's not just, Right? Are you with me? And so in the last couple of days, people wanted to offer up prayers to our president. And no different than any other human being, no different than any other of the 50,000 people that contracted COVID-19 just yesterday. Would I obviously, as connected to the human race, offer up prayers of well wishes and well-being, right? But there was all this energy about, oh, are you spiritual enough? Are you non-judgmental enough to offer up a prayer to the president? And there was this stuff going on online about it, right? And I thought, some people were like, I just can't do that, right? I can't pray for that man. I can't wish him well. This is karma. This is this is that. And then people were judging those people for being in that position. And what I said over and over again on forums that I had the opportunity to say this online, I said, here's the thing. The abused rarely offer up empathetic, compassionate prayer for their abuser. Very rarely. Sometimes it happens, usually after a period of time has passed and some of that pain has been released, acknowledged, healed, right? But in the midst of it, in the midst of the heat, the abused, hear me, the abused rarely offer up prayers of compassion and empathy for their abuser. There's too much pain there in the way. And so something has to be healed and released first. Understand? All right. And so I offered up a prayer that was about not the healing of the body, but about really wanting a complete and total transformation of the consciousness behind the thing, right? In affirmative prayer and New Thought, we believe in the thing behind the thing, behind the thing, behind the thing, right? Sickness is always a symptom of something else that's happening in mind, right? And so I wanted to say, what's the consciousness behind this? That what is the consciousness that refuses to wear masks or refuses to mandate mask wearing in public events? What's the consciousness that in the face of scientific evidence still gathers large crowds? What's the consciousness that denied the seriousness of the issue from the beginning? What is the consciousness that refuses to move forward with bold action plans for testing and supplies and pitting the states against each other and all of these, right? Like, can we heal that? Can we heal that in prayer? What is that consciousness that is so stuck in otherness? And that is not a judgment about the president. That is about an observation about the consciousness that created it. And how I heal that is healing the otherness within me, right? Let's be very clear, right? It always comes back to ourselves. Our prayers about other people are always about us. So some people wanted to kind of get on me and school me online saying, oh, you're praying in judgment. No, I'm trying to heal the consciousness of otherness within me because I'm tired of seeing the consciousness of otherness out there. Come on, talk to me, somebody. Right? And so we have to find our way to putting up strong boundaries that compassion says, no, that behavior doesn't belong here because we belong to each other, because you are just like me. All the things I judge are just like me. So I want to bring this to a close because we've got all month to kind of unpackage. I hope I've stirred some things in you today, and write in, let me know what your questions are about this series. And we'll keep going on this. I don't want to share everything today. We're going to have a great speaker next week, and this is just going to get better and better as we dive more into it. But today, what I want to do is offer you a prayer of compassion for the other, right? After we've made clear what our boundaries are, what we're not willing to tolerate, right? A big part of healing is being clear about what we're not willing to tolerate. Let that sink in for a minute. It's okay to have very clear boundaries and still be in oneness and still be in love and still be in that God is all there is, right? because your health and well-being might be dependent on those boundaries. The health and well-being of children might be dependent on the establishment of those boundaries. So it's okay to speak up for those things. It's more than okay. It's godly. It's spiritual. I'm going to be very clear about this today. And as we do that, then with firm boundaries in place, we can offer up a prayer of compassion for the things that we judge in others that are done by people just like us. And so that's what I'm going to close with today. This is called the Just Like Me mantra. The Just Like Me mantra. Just like me. If you think of the other person, whoever the other is for you, it could be somebody in your family. It could be a category of people. It could be political, non-political. I'm not going to pretend like I know what your other is. It could be whatever. I've discovered in the last couple of days, I am the other for some people, right? I have become their other. All right. So they can, if they're tuning in or they see this later, they can think of me while they do this mantra. That's okay. We all might be somebody's other. And we all have an other in our consciousness somewhere, right? So this is the Just Like Me mantra. Think of whoever it is that represents that otherness. Breathe in. Breathe out. See them right in front of you. And here's the mantra. Just like me, you are seeking some happiness in your life. Breathe in. Breathe out. Just like me, you are trying to avoid suffering in your life. Just like me, you have known sadness. Breathe in. Just like me, you want to be loved. Just like me, you were once an innocent child. Just like me, you are a spirit on a journey. You are just like me. And as you release that, I invite you to stay in meditation when you do that. And what will come to the surface is all of the things within yourself that you need to examine and think about and work on healing those. Still while maintaining healthy boundaries, calling out what needs to be called out, but knowing that the work begins right where you are, because right where you are, God is, and you are just like me. Peace and blessings. I love you. Thank you for being a part of this service today. We got some more exciting stuff coming up, so don't go anywhere. Reminder, class this week, and the next week, the walk in the park on Friday. I believe the times have been posted, and the in the drive, what are we calling that? Something drive. The driveway parking lot concert with art and all kinds of really cool stuff. We're going to work on this creative cosmic connections this month. I love you. Peace and blessings.